list. In fact, if you're a baseball fan, this man really needs no introduction. Somebody that was not only a terrific pitcher during the regular season, but probably one of the best postseason big game pitchers of our time, and that's Curt Schilling. Welcome to New Orleans. I understand this is a place that is near and dear to your heart.
It is. There's a little venue about a mile from here called the National World War II Museum. I was in one of the original board of directors when it was founded and opened. Military history, I come from a family of military. My father was military, and my youngest son is a Marine, and it's been, next to baseball, a lifelong passion. And the World War II Museum in New Orleans is probably, and I've been around the world and I've been to museums everywhere, there's nothing that compares to it. And if you come to New Orleans, it is the, the Arch in St. Louis. It is every bit, to me, as important to visit and see, especially in this day and age, with history being lost as much as it is, to remember the greatest generation. And I was there yesterday. I had a chance to sit down with a 100-year-old vet.
Wow.
It's amazing. It's a breathtaking experience.
It sounds like definitely something you should see if you come down here to New Orleans. Meanwhile, pitchers and catchers report in a couple of weeks. I always love this time of year because we go from the Super Bowl right to really the start of baseball season.
Yeah, we do. I mean, there's that every year for the four-sport fan. There's very brief periods nowadays, given media the way it is, of no sports. But that's when the Monday morning quarterbacks have their field day. What your team should have done this winter, who they should have signed, who they didn't sign. Oh my God, contracts are getting out of control, and all the things that go with that. And it's always a weird time of year for me because I was already in spring training by this time every year. I was usually down the first week of January and had a bunch of the young guys, the Butch Henrys of the world. I had them in a group and doing work early, and so this was always a fun time of the year.
It sounds like it. Did you ever even have much downtime during the off season where you would not throw?
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, I had a very strict program to the day, to the throw, really, that I began usually, depending on how far we went into the postseason. When we went to the postseason, it would be pushed back, and when we didn't, it would be moved up. And as I played 22 years of professional baseball, and as my career developed, I developed a routine that fit me, and every year it was making adjustments, and as you see now with the modern day athlete, we didn't have all the resources that the athletes today have, so we had to make up our own, and I did.
Well, it tells me, you were telling me before this interview started that you were kind of doing sabermetrics before sabermetrics became a thing in baseball.
Well, so I'm going to date myself. 1993, the Phillies, the Macho Row old school club. I had a laptop in the mid '90s, and I had video. I learned from some of the greatest to ever play, the Tony Gwynn's and the Greg Maddoxes, and preparation is everything. And I realized in 1994 that batting average and slugging and all that other stuff, those weren't the stats that mattered to me. It was swing percentages and what hitters do and what counts. And as a guy who threw a lot of strikes, and understanding swing counts and swing percentages was far more important to me than how many strikeouts you had.
Meanwhile, when I look at your career and your body of work, you got better as you got older. And not a lot of players can say that, especially pitchers, as their arms start to wear down. What allowed you to maybe find the best years of your career in your 30s and even into your early 40s?
Well, and it's a challenging conversation because I played in the height of the steroid era, right? And guys that got better as they got older were cheaters for the most part. For me, it was the opposite. I got hurt. And on the road to rehab, I had a phenomenal trainer in Philadelphia named Jeff Cooper, Dr. Craig Morgan, who fixed my shoulder. I found religion after I got hurt. I had very advanced surgery in 1995 for a torn labrum with a doctor who wasn't inside the baseball circle, and I threw over 3,000 innings after that surgery.
Wow.
Because I found religion. I took care of my arm in ways I'd never thought about. I was doing plyometrics and all the things that people are doing nowadays. I was doing that 30 years ago because I had such cutting edge people. There's a guy named Eric Cressy who Cressy Sports runs one of the most advanced and best, I think, modern day pitching programs I've ever seen. I was doing that stuff 30 years ago because I had guys who were older, and Phil Donnelly, who was, he was an Olympic trainer, and he's in the Olympic NATA Hall of Fame. He rehabbed me from my first surgery, and ever since then, I knew the arm.
Curt Schilling with us here from Radio Row. Meanwhile, you have 3 World Series titles. Your first was with Arizona. I look back at that 0-1 series, coming off of 9/11 and all the emotion and what that turned into, a 7-game classic. And as great as the Boston series were for you, does Arizona still hold a special place because it was the first?
Well, I was blessed. 0-1 and 0-4. You know, people in Arizona and people in Boston always, you know, which one was your favorite? And I always answer yes. You know, no, you got to remember, I grew up in Phoenix.
Exactly.
So that had another piece to this. Roger Clemens in 1991 turned my career around. I stood on the mound opposite Clemens in Game 7 of that World Series. Then you had 9/11. We visited Ground Zero, and all the things around that. You couldn't have had. I don't think baseball could have done more than it did to help this country back up on its feet. You know, we took a little break in September when it happened, and we came back, and we had one of the greatest World Series that was ever played. And that was all of it. I mean, you know, it was, I think, one of the few times in this country's history where everybody was rooting for New York.
Mm-hmm.
And if you looked at it, it worked out up until Game 7. You know, we won the first 2. We dominated them in Arizona. They came back and won 3 of the greatest World Series games ever played, back to back to back in New York, energized that city. And then we came home and we beat them 16-2, and then, you know, Game 7.
You still enjoy watching the game today, especially as it's changed?
It's hard.
Yeah.
The game has changed so much, and I'm not a back in my day kind of guy, but in a sense I am, and it gives me acid reflux to watch a starting pitcher walk off the mound in the 6th inning and tip his hat. You know, as a starting pitcher, I was always taught that the most important statistic you could have as a pitcher were innings pitched, because all the other numbers would take care of themselves with innings pitched. And I look back on my career now and think I probably would have had a much better 1-loss record and a lower ERA if I hadn't gone as deep into games sometimes as I did. But that was the game we knew, and I always took a lot of pride in that. And you know, one of my favorite stats of my career isn't any of the award stuff. It's the fact that I threw 306 innings in 2001, and the last 48 were my best.
Yeah, and that's unheard of these days.
Yeah.
In fact, you also have 3,000 strikeouts in your career, and you look at it, we'll probably never see a 300-game winner again the way the game is right now.
It's going to be very hard because of the fact that, and you know, as a starting pitcher, wins are clearly a very big deal. But you realize, kind of from the back looking in, that starting pitchers have a lot less control over the win than you might have thought they did. Now, great pitchers are going to win games. But, you know, you look at a guy like Paul Skeens. You know, the chance that he'll throw 230 innings in a season are minimal. And if that's the case, then he's probably not going to be able to win 22 or 23 games consistently year in and year out unless he has a fluke year. And it takes 10 years of 20 wins to win 200. And I think the 200 is going to be the new 300 for the most part.
I think so too. Meanwhile, a couple of years ago when you were coming off the ballot, you said, I don't care about the Cooperstown in the Hall of Fame. Now we're getting ready for the contemporary ballot coming in as part of the special eras of baseball. Your name is going to be on there, and as we've talked about in the past, you look at Curt Schilling and most people say, oh yeah, he's a slam dunk for Cooperstown. If it comes up again and you do get the call that you're going to be in as part of one of the special era committees, what would that mean to you?
Well, it depends, and you know, I should back up and say, you know, it wasn't that I didn't care if I made it or not. It just became a process that was so politically motivated that it was really uncomfortable, and that time of the year became a very unhappy time because of the things around it. And some of those self-inflicted, absolutely, but some of them not. And so, you know, my 10th year on the ballot, I asked to be taken off because I didn't want to go through the process again. If the contemporary thing happens, then it will have happened, and I will have been voted in by people who played the game, which will be probably much more meaningful in a lot of different ways. And you know, I played with Hall of Famers, you know, and I knew what a Hall of Famer. I never looked at myself as a Hall of Famer ever, and I played with guys who should have been in first ballot, the Dale Murphys of the world, the Scott Rowlands of the world who just got in, and realized that there's a lot of politics and personality involved in the process that maybe shouldn't be.
If you were playing today, would you want to play on a team like Los Angeles, as the Dodgers have just loaded up and essentially built a super team? Or would you have said, you know what, I'd rather go out and beat them as opposed to join them?
Well, it's an interesting question because that was the decision in 2003 when I got traded from Arizona. I had the opportunity to go to New York and play for the Yankees or go to Boston. And it came down to that decision, and the discussion was with my wife, do I want to go to New York and win number 28, 29, and 30, or do I want to go to Boston and do something that no one alive has ever seen? And clearly, you kind of know how that worked out.
I do.
But I wouldn't mind playing for the Dodgers today. I mean, that's going to be a fun clubhouse. And a winning clubhouse.
Yes, it is. Here we are in New Orleans on Sunday. They're going to play a rematch of 2 years ago. How do you see the game going between the Eagles and the Chiefs?
So I have a rooting interest, playing 10 years in Philadelphia and having the Philadelphia fans be so good to me and to my family. I'm clearly rooting for the Eagles. But I believe in October changes people. The postseason changes people. And I don't know how you bet against Mahomes. I mean, he's done it. He's done it in a myriad of ways and with a myriad of talent. And when you have, I think the Eagles probably are worried for the same reason everybody else would be worried. You're playing against Andy Reid. Yeah. And they know Andy Reid, and Andy Reid is as good as they come. But this Philadelphia team, a little surprised at the defense. It wasn't more dominant this year. I was expecting that. I'm a Steeler fan, so. But I think like everything else, I want it to be a good game. I'd like to see an Eagles win in overtime.
That would be a classic.
Yes, it would.
All right, final question, and you've been great with your time. When people hear the name Curt Schilling, how do you want to be remembered?
So it's interesting. My wife and I, and my wife's son and I, in 1992, we had a conversation. She asked me that. She asked me what I wanted from the game, and I said, when I walk away from the game, I want to have done two things. I want to win the Roberto Clemente Award, which I was blessed enough to do, because that was my dad's favorite player, and I always felt like that was an award that kind of just explained who you were as a human being. And I want the guys that I suited up with, if they had a win or lose, life or death game, I would want them to want me to have the ball. So the game owes me nothing. It gave me far more than I could ever give back, and that's part of the reason I think we're walking Radio Row this week is to talk about the museum, but more importantly, I have a rooting interest in getting back into the game, whether it be as a color guy or as someone working with young pitchers. I love to teach and I love the game.
Well, enjoyed sitting time talking to you, and who knows, we might be seeing you in El Paso, home of the Chihuahuas, and as you get yourself back in the game, it'd be a lot of fun.
All right, thank you.
You got it. Curt Schilling joining us here from Radio Row.